your creative your creative element.
Yeah,
So
yeah, 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 yeah.
we'll jump right into it. Welcome to Strictly Creative. Our guest is Adrian Walters. He's a Canadian actor. Hello, Adrian.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I know we kind of just spoke right before the start of this interview, and you were talking about the very productive day you've had, and I want to I want to talk to you about this film you recently acted in called ROADMARKS, which was
Yes.
one of the many great films featured at the 2023 Ottawa Black Film Festival and the 2023 Toronto Black Film Festival. When I read the description, I was like, okay, I gotta watch this film, and I did, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And I'll just quickly read the film description here for folks who probably want to hear about it. Basically, you portray the character named Kory. So Kory turns back to street fighting to raise cash for his daughter's music school against his better judgment and the love of his life's wishes. Seeking guidance from family, he tries to figure out where his focus should lie. This film was directed by Brandon McKnight. So first and foremost, tell us a little bit more about this character that you played, the name Kory in ROADMARKS, and what drew you to this role.
So this role is very close to home. This was a role that it was pretty much conceptualized based on a friend of mine.
Wow.
I grew up with. I've known him since I want to say 12 or 11, and I'm 29 now. So that's a long-standing friendship, right? And we have grown up so close. Like, he's literally like a brother to me. Blood couldn't make us closer. And he found himself in a moment in his life where he was having a very tough time, you know? And because I'm his brother, I was like right there experiencing it with him, like up close and personal, and trying to be like wise counsel, for this person, because I love this person, and try and steer them away from harm's way. But in their mind, like the character, they figured that what they were doing was of service because it was allowing them, what they were doing wasn't harmful because it was allowing them to be of service. It was highlighting like that inner need to feel like you're making a contribution to the people around you that you feel like have given you so much. So you feel like you have to do your part. And, some people think that, this is all I know, and he found himself in that space, and because I was so up close and personal, like with it, and like it was very taxing on like the friendship, very taxing on so many different ways. I felt like I wanted to explore that through a character, and also seek to like potentially further understand him, because like that's what I do as an actor. Like, you try and understand someone's psyche, understand the motivations of something. Why do they keep doing this, even though it's breaking up their life? It's breaking up the things they built in their life, But it all comes back to that human need to feel like you're making a contribution. So I found that to be really fascinating. And I feel like I'm a very whole person. Like, anyone that knows me, anyone that's close to me knows that like I take pride in and like make it a point to have like a daily regimen in like nurturing my inner self, my spirit, my relationship with God, self-love, all those things, to make sure like I'm intact, because I feel like in this industry you gotta be solid, or you can lose your way. And that's in any field. But so because of that, I wanted to understand what it was like in terms of that brokenness, that emptiness that he was feeling, and why he felt so deeply he had to do the things he was doing. And I was drawn to that. And in my exploration of that, like, I came upon so many different things that were like just heartbreaking to me. And yeah, it's kind of making me emotional just thinking about it. But yeah, I just discovered so much, and here was a person who considered themselves to be weak. And I remember like being in my room and praying to God, because I was God in my process. I was like, listen, God, speak through me. I know I am just mere mortal, mere human. So I always ask him to speak through me for any role. And I remember asking God, I was like, allow me to understand what my friend is experiencing on the deepest level. Allow me to understand that truth so that, when we shoot this thing, I can really embody and really honor him, you know? And I remember one day I felt something he told me that he felt. He verbalized something. And one day I felt like I felt it deeply to the point where it scared me, you know? And it was more so. I'll share it with you. I feel I'll share it with you since we're
Please, yes,
having
yes.
a conversation. Remember one time, like there had been, I think it was 3 times where 2 times where he called me, and then another time where I was alerted by someone where he was having suicidal thoughts, and he pretty much called me and was saying like, "Hey man, thank you for being my friend. Thank you." He was kind of doing that and alluding to it, and I was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "This phone." I'm like, it sounded like like when they're speaking in a way where it's like, this is not just a thank you. This is not just I really appreciate you. It's not that. It was alluding to like it felt like a goodbye, and I kind of
Mm.
caught him in the middle and said, "You better watch yourself." And like respectfully, brother to brother. You can check your brother. You're allowed to check your brother if that's really your brother. And he told me what he was experiencing 2 times when he called me and pretty much said that. And I pretty much I did my best. I was like, hey, God, speak to me in the moment to pull him off that edge because I love this person. I want this person in my life. And I remember praying to God and asking for him to understand that on the deepest of levels. I remember I started to feel that one day. I started to feel like this deep emptiness and like just feeling like nothing mattered, like existence doesn't matter, and this, that, and the third. And I remember I was also training. I got physically like in shape for that thing because I didn't look like how I ended up looking in that short film. I did not look like that. Matter of fact, I actually posted like a progress picture on my Instagram because it was so jarring to me. But I remember one day I went to the boxing gym for training and I was walking home, and the walk home felt longer than it usually felt, you know? And I started to like feel every second of my existence, in a way where it was scary, and it felt like I really felt each moment passing, and I understood what he meant by it's like, he just feels like he's just lagging. He just feels like he's here and he doesn't know what to do. And every 10 minutes feels like 30 days. You know what I mean? So it's just like you don't know what to do with yourself. And for him, he was always seeking purpose. He was always seeking purpose. So, long story short, I feel like that was a long-winded answer. I was just drawn to that. I was just like understanding him and how he tried to fill that space of purpose within him. And yeah, I just like learned so many different things about him and what he's experiencing, anyone in that space. And I remember calling him crying after having a deep cry and telling God. Like I remember I came home and it was so weird because I didn't even feel like telling my mom how scary the thoughts I was having. I was like, whoa, this is so weird. This wasn't here 2 days ago. And I remember just getting on my knees and saying, God, hold me right now, because I feel very scared, with all the things I'm thinking in my head. And I realized I'm like, oh, I called upon, so I asked for this understanding. I remember after crying, I was just by my bedside, I was crying, and I remember I called him and I was like, listen, man, I know you say you're weak, but you are a fucking strong man. If you're experiencing that on the daily and you're still here, you're a lot stronger than you think. That is not for the weak-hearted, you know? So yeah, that's what like drew me to the role. And that's like a bit of my experience, just like trying to understand him as a
Wow.
person and as a brother.
You know what? I really appreciate that answer, and how you've given us the full picture, and you dove deep. And there's so much I want to ask just in regards to your answer, because you speak about this strong connection to this friend of yours and his reality. But also it's interesting too because you seem like I don't personally know you or anything like that, but as soon as I saw you on Zoom, I looked. My first initial thought was, wow, this person seems very at peace, very grounded, and it sounds to me like you're spiritually connected. You're a person of faith. I imagine. It sounds like it is because you speak
Yeah.
of that, and
Yes.
it's interesting as someone who's a creative, someone who's an actor, performer. I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't hear a lot about the role of spirituality in one's creative work and process. But I'm gonna ask you some more questions in regards to the film. But
Yeah.
I want to know, I want to understand your process some more, because it's really interesting how you tapped into that, and I appreciate your honesty in your responses here. And the film, as you mentioned, deals, like, there's a lot of themes such as economic survival, love, parenting, responsibility, redemption, to name a few. Um, and I think you've kind of alluded to this in your first answer, but how did you approach portraying those themes in your performance? Because Kory is a complex character, right? He's got all these pressures, he's got all these hats he's wearing. He's a parent, he's got a love in his life, he's got a girlfriend, yet he's still street fighting to provide for his family. How did you go about portraying all those themes in your performance?
Hmm. Um. Well, like, list the theme. Like, say it again in which order, and I'll answer it in that order.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's all these complex sort of themes. Primarily, it's this economic survival, right? This
Yes.
need
Yes.
to,
Economic survival.
you got a job, you got to work, you got to provide. There's a theme of love, like his relationship
Yes.
with his girlfriend.
Okay, we'll answer one by one. We'll answer
Sure,
one by one.
sure.
So for the economic bit, I knew that personally. Like, for my first couple years of acting, I made little to no money. So I knew what that's like to have to hustle. I was folding shirts and jeans at Guess clothing store. I don't know if you know what Guess clothing is,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the clothing brand, and I was I
yeah,
was
of course.
folding clothes at Guess, for my part-time job, make my money, and so I know exactly what that is. And I was also working at a restaurant at the time, you know. So, and I remember I just gotten, so like, I'll also tell you the backstory of ROADMARKS. So ROADMARKS was a film that six other individuals and myself funded. We came together and funded that project, and it was all completely conceptualized by us. And I remember at the time, like, because of my idea, I was the lead funder in that project. So I had to work and pick up as many hours as I possibly could to get the job done, in terms of funding the project. So I knew what that was like economically, like him saying, like, crunching numbers, and there's a timeline, it's like, yeah, we can say, we can work this part-time job and do this, but it's like, listen, we need this money because we go to camera on this day, so it's like, where are we going to get that from? I've been in many situations as an actor where you're trying to, because you're pursuing what you love, but you also realize that you also have to feed yourself,
Mm-hmm.
So with that experience, I feel like anybody, coming up and with a dream or goal can understand, that economic struggle, of trying to figure yourself out, trying to figure your life out and provide. Also when you have people that are counting on you, which is leading into parenting,
Right.
you're like, when you're responsible for another human being, you really, like, I don't have kids myself, but I just know that, like, I'm very close to my parents, my father. I've been very blessed, to have my father and my mother in my life, my entire life. And God willing, we get to, live out many more years. But I've had them in my life, and I've also seen moments where it was tough, and understood that struggle, like a parent's eyes when you ask them for something, they feel they can't give it to you, how they kind of wear a smile on their face, when really it's, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I just made a promise that involves me throwing my hat way over the fence, and I need to go get it now,
Right. Yeah.
So I understand that, and even to this day, like, I feel like as I mature as a human being, I'm learning things about my parents, and I'm learning that they're not. I feel like we alienate our parents. We kind of look at our parents as aliens. I noticed, where we almost feel like they're not human beings. They don't have feelings. They don't have dreams. They don't have goals and stuff like that. And they do. Like my mom and my dad. Each day I look at them, to me they start to look like babies now. Or my mom will smile about something, you know, like you'll compliment her on something and she'll smile about something and you're like, whoa, like I can tell that really made her day. Like she really wanted to hear that. You know, she really
Mm.
wants to hear good job. You look nice. You know, my dad will come and get a haircut and he'll spend as much time around me walking around until I take notice of it. You know? I'm like, okay, you're looking like a young man. We're Jamaican, so the accent comes out. Right? He's like, oh, you're kind of looking like a little man, you know, and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, I know, let's go to the barber, you know, little something, something, you know. So I understand what it is. Like, you know, they're human beings. They have hearts, you know. So I feel like I really understood what that was, you know, just through living and being an empathetic human being. I can understand what that is, and someone who wants to provide and feeling like they can't. I know what that is, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right on. In terms of the role, so you mentioned that there were six of you guys that funded this project, right? So you guys were
Yes.
very invested in this, obviously. Um, did you have, like, in terms of acting techniques or methods to get into your character, for those who are, for those of us who aren't involved in your industry or your art form acting, how do you get into the zone? Are there particular techniques or methods you use to get into a particular character or portraying a character? If you could kind of educate us on that, please.
There are like a lot of techniques that are flirting around in the industry, and I'm sure one of them you've heard is probably like method. There's like Meisner, um, and I would say that like I don't really want to say like I subscribe to a particular thing because I feel like the process of acting is pretty much a mixture of all of them. You know, like Meisner is kind of like you take what's in front of you and you work off of that. You know, you kind of play a nice game of tennis. That's Meisner. Whatever's happening right now, we're doing that. So if you say hello, I'll be like hello, and you're like hello, I'll be like hello, hello, hello. You know, it's like that. It's like
Mm,
it goes. It's better. Whatever you give me, I'll give you. You know,
right.
which what acting is at its best. It's like it's this connected game of tennis. And then there's method, which is to immerse yourself as deeply as you can into the process of what that person is doing. So method pretty much means like you do your best to take on the life of that character. It's like you ask yourself the questions that aren't on the page, aren't in the script. Like, what is their daily routine? If they're a fighter, that means they fight. You know,
Mm,
what? How do they get prepared for that? How do they preserve their body? You know, how do they do all these things? How do they keep themselves sharp? So for me, I pretty much I enrolled myself into a fight class, a boxing class,
nice.
which is like 10 to 15 minutes from my house, and I'll go 3 times a week. I started doing like push-ups, sit-ups, so push-up crunches, sit-ups, jumping jacks, high knees, running on the spot, all that stuff every day. And I would do like 200 to 800 reps of push-ups every day.
Wow. Wow.
Um, yeah. So for like the span of 3 months, and it completely transformed my body. It completely transformed my mind and the sharpness. Like I've never been more disciplined.
Mm,
I got to a point where I was like, oh my god, I think I'm actually fully in control of myself. You know, in
wow.
terms of like urges and stuff like that. Like nothing could tempt me because I would keep things out of my point of view, like sweets and stuff like that, because I have a little
Mm,
bit of sweet when it comes to candy. So I was like, I can't eat that. And I was working at the keg, you know what I mean, trying to pack in them hours so I can film this film. And I
mm.
remember, they were offering us brownies. They're like, hey, Adrian, you want that? And I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. And it get to a point where it's like I would even go to it and smell it. And I'm like, wow, I think I've unlocked the code. Like I'm not drawn to this because I know
Wow.
it's not good for me in
Mm.
terms of my objective. So I've really immersed myself in the lifestyle of the character and yeah, going to fight classes, training every day, and pretty much like working the material and also conversing with my friend's partner at the time about what it was like, being in that relationship with him. And so that's pretty much like how I invested my time into preparing for it. And she just pretty much gave me the play by play of what it felt like, and I just tried my best to like do that.
Right on. How much weight did you say you gained in those 3 months in total? Like, yeah, how much did you weigh
In
before? And
3 months, uh, I probably put on maybe, I would say 15, I would say 12 to 15 pounds of muscle maybe.
Wow.
And shredded my fat away. Shredded like I was dumbfounded. Like I had veins in my abs, and I was like, I've never experienced this in my life, you know.
That's
And you know
awesome.
what's funny? You want to hear a funny joke? What got me to believe that I actually could do it is like
What's
my
that?
brother's a personal trainer, right?
Okay.
But he's very regimented, and he does like the most, to keep his body in shape. But so he's always been training like that. So I'm like, Lamar is Lamar. That's just how it is. That's just how he's cut. He's that guy.
Mm.
It was after seeing Michael B. Jordan in the first Creed. It was seeing Michael B. Jordan in the first Creed because I had watched Fruitvale Station, and I'm like, he did not look like that. Like, I'm like, that man had no muscle to his name,
Mhm.
in Fruitvale Station, and then he transformed himself in Creed. And I remember he was saying, he's like, listen, if you do the exercise and you work out, it's just a 2 + 2 = 4.
Right.
Your body has to change. Whether you like it or not, as long as you do the exercise, you drink the water, you eat the meals, your body will change. And that is exactly what happens. So I have to credit him that too. I have to literally credit him that. And then my
Mm.
brother for like obviously giving me the meal plan, training me. But Michael B. Jordan, seeing his transformation from Fruitvale Station to Creed is what gave me the belief that I could do that. Yeah, and I gained about 12 to 15 pounds of muscle doing that.
It's impressive, man. In the film, we see, you fight and the way you move and your physique, and it is very impressive. And the fighting as well is entertaining. Of course, I'm a fan of combat sports, and one of the reasons why I wanted to watch this particular film first was because
Mm,
of that street fighting aspect.
wow.
And don't get me wrong, the film festival has a ton of great other films and so on, but I jumped to that. I gravitated to that first, and the themes and the subject matter covered in the film are very relevant, I think, to people who watch it, if they're fans of combat sports or if they're artists pursuing particular projects or goals. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
anyone caught up in a certain reality where they seem to think that this is the only option they have, if it's unfortunately, if it's even criminal activity, to some extent. I'm sure we all know folks who've been in situations like that. Unfortunately, I'm not saying it's right, but it's the reality of the economic reality of certain communities across the world, and so on. In regards to the fighting, so you took boxing lessons. You said at a gym not too far from your place in Toronto.
Yeah.
How was the experience there training with the with the coaches and so on and fellow boxers? And did you tell them what your intent, what your goal was, and why you were there training? And if so, what sort of advice did they give you?
Yes, I did. I went in day one and I was like, listen, man, I have this objective of how I want to look, how I want to feel, and how I want to be confidently on my feet in terms of like standing in front of someone and feeling like I have something, like I can throw something, you know what I mean? And they were like super open to that. And they said, like, this is the perfect place. And I remember I said that to one guy because he kind of reminded me of Mickey, from Rocky, you know,
Yeah.
like he was an older cat. So I was like, oh, he might know a little something about something. So I went to him and he's like, I got you, but he's like, I don't have the time to personally work with you like that. But there is one gentleman by the name of Jason who does have the time. He can put the time into training you. And he knows everything I know. So he'll be able to give you whatever you need. And I remember they told me I can take this class today, but come back on this specific day and he'll be here. And if you talk to him, you can exchange numbers and you guys can kind of move from there. So I pretty much went in there and I just took part of the group classes. I just jumped into the group and he knew my objective. So he would, in certain moments, isolate me to make sure that, like, I had proper form. And then I would go on Sundays where Sundays was like, so throughout the week was like our private was kind of like group sessions. And when I would go on Sunday, not many people want to leave their house on Sunday, you know, so that was more like a private session, you know, where he would come in and he would focus on me. He'd be like, all right, you know, like, you know, hold your hands like this, you know, all right, now come at me like this, you know, and then he would like go like this and like have you duck and like get all the movements, you know, and get all those reflexes in. And he would give me little assignments, you know, of like certain things you can do at home that kind of trains your body to react, you know, in fights, you know. And if you're involved in the fight, well, you know this. Like any fighter knows this. It's like you do certain exercises, and you're like, I don't see the point of this. And then next thing you know, you're in front of someone. You're like, oh wow, I'm quick. I can. Oh wow, I'm ducking that. Oh, I get that motion. You know, that range of motion, duck, and then you know. So he pretty much put me on the bags. They also told me that it won't be easy. You know, they're like, listen, man, you'll learn it. You're like, you know, you're gonna learn it. It might feel weird, it might feel awkward, some of the things we're gonna have you do. But if you just trust the process, you're gonna see results. And I remember just doing that. And my trainer, Jason, became like a really close and dear friend to me, you know, and he steered me in the right direction, would give me strong advice, you know, would push me, you know, really push me to getting in the ring to sparring, because I had a lot of nerves around that. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this exercise, but how does it translate now in front of someone? And he really pushed me to get in there to experience what that was like. So yeah, they were very helpful in terms of like preparing and feeling confident. If that answers your question, I feel like it was a long question.
No, this is great. You know, it's a 15-minute long film, and when I watched it, there were a lot of moments that really grabbed me seriously, because I thought about a lot of you know, particularly when it comes to sports or combat sports, and situations where a lot of people want to maybe give up a sport because, you know, XYZ reason, they're injured, you know, they realize they can't push on anymore. There's a lot of raw emotion in this film, and I think it's a film anyone can watch. It's not just for some guy who likes combat sports. In fact, one of my favorite scenes in the film, you know, of course the fighting is great. One of my favorite scenes actually is the dynamic between this street fighter named, you know, Kory, who is hiding, you know, the fact that he's out there fighting from his girlfriend. And you see the vulnerability. It's funny how much emotion you can, you know, communicate with your facial expression. You know, when you're coming into the home, and we could see the fear, the anxiety, there's just so much that's represented there. And the exchange between the both of y'all, especially when she finds out that you're back on the streets fighting, and she's, you know, I hope people watch the film. I don't know, spoilers or anything like that. I probably just kind of did. I kind of did spoil it. Sorry. But you know, you see that raw explosion in the dynamic, and it's a really interesting shift, because we you know, we see this combativeness there as well. You know, where Kory's girlfriend, you know, I think she's like, this is the third time, and that exchange was, I found, really powerful, and really added to the whole story and what was at stake, you know, for him in terms of his personal relationship. My question for you now is, can you tell us a particular memorable moment or scene from filming ROADMARKS? Is there a particular memorable scene or moment for you that really encapsulates the character?
I would say it's funny you highlighted that, because I remember there was two moments. It was that scene, working with Umberly Gonzalez, is the actress. It was a dear friend of mine, and we had met, I want to say, like pretty much before that film. Like we had met prior, when I did a play. She came and helped us out with something, so I met her once, and we ended up working together on this story. And we had like taken time to like hang out and time like connect, so that we can genuinely feel like strong feelings towards each other, and a deep care, you know. And I remember I really developed that, you know, for her, and vice versa. You know, she's a very open person, so we felt strongly towards each other in that way. And I remember doing that scene And I remember when, like, in scene, I remember walking and putting my hand on her back, being like, "Baby, chill, 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 chill. Like I understand this is bad, but like just hear me out for a second." And she was like vibrating. Like I felt like I touched her and my hand bounced back because she was vibrating so deeply, like you hurt me,
Right.
you know? And I really felt that in her being. And it scared me. I'm like, oh my God, I did that, you know? And so it led into like, but it led into like the direction of the scene where it's like, you know, she's on me about it. I'm like, well, let me talk, blah, blah, blah. And she's just hitting me. It's like, I explode. But it's like, well, here's all the things you do. Here's all the things I feel. Well, you know, since you want to be so expressive, you know, and it explodes. And I remember, yeah, that was a beautiful moment between us. That was really
Big
powerful.
time.
And
Big time.
it took us all by shock, you know. You know, you can prepare for things, but you never know how things are going to translate. So that was a beautiful moment. And like I felt like, and because my heart got torn open in that moment, I remember realizing like, oh, I might be in trouble. Because like I felt so strongly for her that I was like, oh my God, I think I'm in love with this woman. You know, which is a scary thing that actors don't talk about too, which is like, how do you formalize like a deep love and care for someone that's honest, and then know that when the project wraps, keep that separate.
Wow.
You know, how do you even create boundaries within the process of honest emotion? You know, that's not many people talk about that. That's not something we talk about in industry a lot. You know, they really encourage you to fall in love with these people on screen, but no one talks about how you have to process it going home, you know?
If you watch, if people watch this film, they will know what you're talking about, because when you guys are looking at each other, especially with her initially, there is love there. You know, there's a deep connection. It resonates and it goes kabuki. It goes crazy when she finds out that, you know what I mean, you're still fighting. It's like she goes from Tweety Bird to the Tasmanian Devil, and you know, that energy vibing back and forth. It was, that in itself was like not a fight, but it was a fight of energy, you know, in terms of like what love does to people. And it's interesting to hear that, you know, you were that in it emotionally, that you developed a connection with her.
Yeah.
And people, if can we talk about that can we talk about that theme, and how do you all as actors like decompress it? I don't know if that's the right technical term. How do you separate? Because you know you're talking about that honest connection, you know, you're performing, but please.
But you make it feel real to yourself. You convince yourself of that. And there's so many different ways of going about it. For me personally, what I did was like, you know, just like express myself. It's like, wow, it's like really feel so much towards you, like such a deep love. I remember, and like you have friends to lean on, that other friends that are also great craftsmen that kind of help you, because I didn't go to theater school, you know. I didn't do all that. I went through like fit TV and film training, which is a bit different than the way they train you for the stage. So I didn't have all that decompressing tools at hand. So, but luckily I have amazing friends around me that kind of broke down the process for me. Because at first I was like, all right, I'll just avoid this human being, you know? And they're like, that ain't gonna work, you know? Because what's the saying? There's a saying about like, you know, separation creates appreciation or something like that. Like, you know what, when you don't see someone, you know? You can fall deeper, you know? Right. I don't remember the name of the saying, but pretty much my friend was like, listen, you know what you do? You breathe through that. You release that. You touch back into your reality, but that is real for yourself. You did create that for yourself. So what we started doing was hanging out and connecting, and from that, we became the best of friends throughout that process. And it's so funny because like in our industry, relationships do move really fast. It's like you can meet someone, work with them for 3 days, a month, however, and they become a lifelong friend, or maybe, you know, your wife or your brother, like, you know, that like a brother from another mother. Like you never know how it goes. But So from my experience, that's what it was. It was more so like hanging out, connecting, vibing, and just realizing that this is just a friendship. You know what I mean? But there's trickier situations, you know, especially that we've seen in our industry. And one of the things that we as artists do, and something I enforce, you know, within myself, because I'm a very hard on the sleeve guy, is to create a pact, pretty much, like realizing like this is not reality. This is truth in a box, you know, and it lives within the confinement of this project. And beyond that is no more, you know, especially for things where you have to be deeply intimate with someone. But understand, outside of that box, you did create, you know, a real love and care for that person, and that does exist. But anything intimate is not. You know, that's just truth locked in a box, because you'll find yourself in situations where you are a married person and you go into a project having to play a love interest with someone. It's like, how do you navigate that now?
Wow.
You know, where
Yes.
you don't bring harm to your home. You know, you don't chip away at what you built, you know, where you're from, you know. So, but you also have to be honest, because you are contractually obligated, you know. So as actors, one of the things I've learned is, yeah, we have pacts. We pretty much just like make self promises and then make a promise with that other actor of what this is, and you kind of navigate, you know, the truth of this story in that box. And when you step out of it, you go your ways.
Very, very interesting. I know I
Yeah.
probably I don't know how much time you have left. I have a couple of more questions. I hope I can take you
Yeah.
for another 20 minutes. Is that cool?
That's fine. Yeah, we're here. Let's do it. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. No, I'm really enjoying this. I really appreciate your time and everything you're telling us here. In addition to acting, you've also worked as a writer and director. How has your experience in those roles influenced your approach to acting?
Well, I've actually only worked as a writer.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry.
Only worked as a writer. Only worked as a writer. Yeah.
Okay.
How it's changed my approach is it made me realize that if it's on the page, it's there for a reason. You know, so if it's on the page, it should be on the stage, and if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage, according to Mr. Denzel Washington. So it taught me that everything on the page is integral, because when you're making a film, especially if it's short film, you know, or even a feature film, it's money. So you have to film everything on the page. So you got to be really wise and really certain about what you want, what helps to tell the story and what doesn't. And if it doesn't help to tell the story, you cut it. It is not in the script. So writing something taught me everything is integral. So if a writer puts something in a script, that is a device or a key thing you can use to enhance your performance and to capture their vision. So that's pretty much what it taught me. So it's like, take everything in, like read it as much as possible and really spend time with it in a way where you can mine the ideas that were put into it, because it will enhance your performance. So that's pretty much like what I've learned from writing myself.
Right on. What do you think in terms of what do you hope audiences take away from ROADMARKS after seeing it? Well, what do you think? What is the expected outcome for viewers? What should they take away from this film?
You know, it's so interesting because I never thought too deeply into like what I ultimately like. I hope that they just take away a personalized experience with it, and like whatever that means to them, and hopefully like understanding towards people, like things aren't just black and white, things are gray at some times. And, and to like give people grace and like give people space and grace, because a lot of people are fighting, inner demons, things that they're vocalizing, things that they're not vocalizing,
right.
And at the end of the day, that nobody's perfect, and that we're literally all just trying to find our way. We're all trying to figure it out. It doesn't matter how rich, how set up, how poor, dead broke, generational wealth you have, or whatever it is. It's like no matter where you find yourself, if you are breathing air, you are still trying to figure things out, still trying to find your way and to navigate this human experience and make sense of it for yourself, and everyone is trying to make a contribution, and how they, decide to make their contribution will tell you, a lot about them. But give people grace, because, you can easily be that person, you're not too far from anything, so I really hope like people just like leave with like deeper understanding of people, and yeah, grace and space and grace, to be themselves and to figure themselves out, and obviously it can be very tough at times. I personally have that experience in my own life with my friend, as I told you. But yeah, keep loving on them, keep sending love and keep checking in, and just like, hopefully they figure things out, and win their battle, like whatever that battle is, hopefully they win it.
Right. So it's like almost having compassion and empathy for people with this space and grace. Is that what you mean? Yeah. Oh, did I just cut out? I think I may have
it's
cut
definitely
out.
it is definitely that, like compassion and empathy towards people, as much as possible. The same compassion and empathy you would want, from someone.
Right.
Few
more questions for you. What inspired, and you probably get this question all the time, so I apologize if I'm hammering this question again, but what inspired your journey into performance arts and acting? What sparked that interest?
I grew up in a big family of 7 kids. Okay.
Wow.
And did that chip out? Yeah, 7 kids, and my parents, my mom specifically, was very adamant and very proactive in like helping us figure out like what each of us like most gravitated towards. So she would put so many different things in front of us, from coloring books to guitars that ended up getting broken, pianos that we didn't play with our fingers but our feet, flutes that we pour juice into, just being a mess, and but she was very proactive and like just consistently putting things in front of us to see what it is that we wanted to do. And one of the things that I gravitated towards was, the television, was watching movies, was making impersonation of characters and making my brother laugh. My brother that's older than me by 2 years, I would always enjoy making him laugh. And like my stories about it to this day, I was like the house comedian, and I still am to a degree. But I'd always love making people laugh. And I would watch movies and it would inspire me, And it was something that like I always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do, but I never really like went out and did it. It was just kind of existing back there in a thought. And I remember coming to the end of high school, and realizing that it's like, oh man, like I don't know what I want to do yet. I was like, damn, what do I do? Everyone's going off, everyone has figured out. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I feel like this is something that I wanted to do. And I was still thinking about it. And I picked up a construction job and made money. And I remember sitting on the balcony one time at this place, well, not construction, renovations. I was sitting on the balcony renovating this condo on my lunch break. I remember looking out and seeing like a Caribbean family selling fruits out of the back of their van. And they looked so joyful. They looked so in tune. Like, like they were probably in retirement, and they were just like, it was something that they were doing, and they felt like they were really giving themselves. It was really beautiful. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is nice and I'm making money, but I don't feel like it's the aligned thing that I'm supposed to be doing, just doing renovations. So I was like, I think I really have to take a look at this acting thing, And so I went online. I started sending out emails. I didn't even have a headshot. I was just like, hi, my name is Adrian Walters, and I would like to, be represented by you. And I remember my agent that I have now, she pretty much emailed me back right away saying, hey, we're not expanding in your age range or type. Thank you. I'm like, she didn't even see my photo. Wow. When I realized it, I'm like, she only deals with people that have some track behind them, So she pretty much just said, too green, too new, no thank you, But in leading up to that, like in doing that, like pretty much sitting down with agents, I ended up signing with one who took me on. and gave me, the space to be able to like learn this industry. I started taking classes and whatnot. But ultimately, it was Leonardo DiCaprio and Denzel Washington that really inspired me, like overall, in terms of like, I want to do this. Like I remember watching Leonardo DiCaprio in Blood Diamond, and Jacques Houseu as well, and Denzel Washington in John Q. I remember those two performances were very pivotal in me wanting to become an actor, and like feeling like it was something I was being called to, where I could express myself and like offer something, from me, like literally out of my being that could be of service to someone and contribute to something, whether that's like multiple things, like the art form as well as anyone who's watching it. And I remember watching Blood Diamond and being so fascinated with how I was so entertained by Leonardo and Jamin Hansu, and at the same time learned about something that I didn't know that was very important, which is like conflict diamonds, what happens in Africa and how many people lose their lives, people that look like me, just so that diamonds can be shipped to America and sold for all this money when they're taken and stripped from Africa for next to nothing. So I found that so impressive that, well, you entertained me, but at the same time, you taught me something, and then on John Q, I was entertained and I was really deeply moved by Denzel Washington's charisma on screen and his ability able to hold your attention. And that kind of set me on the path of like hoping to be able to do that and potentially work with them, so that kind of like inspired me. And as I started getting going, I remember realizing, like having a moment one time when I was walking home and like hearing God's voice and having this feeling in me where I was like, oh yeah, I know this is what I was sent here to do. This is like part of my mission here. I can feel it so deeply. Wow. And that kind of like set me on the course and never looked back since. And it's been by far the greatest adventure. And stepping into anything that you feel like you're called to do, one of the things you also learn that I love and I found out is the character it minds within you. It's literally it's the character that is mined within you. Like the pursuit alone is character development, because you learn so much about yourself. You learn how you react to when you hear the word no, and when you hear it 10 times in a row, when you hear it 30 times in a row, you learn a lot about yourself when you hear that, and then when you hear yes, you learn something about yourself, then you start to learn about validation. You start to learn about, where you draw your sense of worth from, your sense of fulfillment, so you really start to go within yourself and start to put things in place and put things in perspective in a way where it allows you to walk around the world as a fuller human being. So like that's one of the many things that you learn and you take away from the craft, pursuit of the endeavor of like this craft that I am eternally grateful for,
Wow, that is incredible, man. I'm curious to know what advice would you give to say someone, what's the best advice you'd give someone who's pursuing acting? You've kind of, I think, answered it by telling us your story. It was something you were drawn to. It was a calling, right? It was something that enabled you to communicate with your being, right? And tell these stories. Yeah. But it sounds like there could be more there in terms of what advice would you give to people who want to pursue this performance arts and acting?
If you believe in God, I would say keep God first. He will always be right there with you every step of the journey, at your lowest and at your highest. And make sure you love it for the right reasons. It can't be for money, but if it is, by all means, there's many ways to navigate this business, but I feel like you really have to love this thing as in anything. So I would say keep God first. Make sure that you love it for the right reasons. And if nobody paid you to do it, you would still do it, and find a community. As soon as you can, find a community that you feel like loves you and appreciates you, because that will be something that, you have God up there taking care of you and the right things, but you also need people down here, to like be able to lean on, people that you can relate to, people that When you think you're the only one experiencing a low, someone must tells you you're not alone, and you should smile because your blessing is right around the corner. So you need that community. Work on your craft. Work really hard on your craft. Like, I don't feel like acting was something that, like, when I started out the gate, I felt like I was good at it all. It was just like pure excitement and joy to, like, feel like, oh my God, like, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Doesn't mean I'm good at it yet, but I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel like you need patience. You need patience, and not just your own, but divine patience. Because your patience can come to a limit and test.
Sorry,
divine patience.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, where you realize that it's like you may feel like it's cracking, like you're at your limit, and realize that you're not just like you're waiting on God. You're not necessarily waiting on them, but like God to show you. It's like, listen, because I feel like God wants to give you everything that you set out for, but He wants to test you before He gives it to you. So that when you get thing, you're the person that is ready for the thing, that can actually handle and navigate the thing. It's like, how many people win the lottery and they say within 12 months all the money is back in the hands of the rich, or majority of it, like 80% of it, right? Because the millionaire is not the money, the millionaire is the mindset. You know what I mean? The navigation of the understanding of money. So I feel like God will prepare you for the things that you want, as He has done with me and is continually doing with me, in a way where it's like, yeah. So I feel like I was about to switch my answer, but I was like, let me stay focused on what he asked me. Is divine patience. Yeah. So divine patience, keep God first, find your community, make sure you love it for the right reasons, work really hard at it. Nobody should have to tell you to do what you do. Don't wait for someone to, and don't wait for permission to be great, which is something that my brother and friend Leighton Alexander Williams told me. He's like, don't wait to go within and bring out the greatness within you. Don't wait for someone to be like, hey, Adrian, I see that within you. No, do it yourself, because it's in you. Any actor that you admire, that is all within you. Everything you've ever seen them done is within you. Their way to the craft may be unique, but the way they're able to move people, the way they're able to make people laugh, that is all within you. And another thing, and pretty much lastly, is lean into your own uniqueness. Be you. Like whatever it is that stands out about you, that people love about you, people notice about you off the bat, lean into that, because that is calling card. No one else can do that. Like me and my brothers, we go up for the same roles all the time. But when we even help each other run lines, because we don't really look at each other competitively. It's like, listen, man, as long as it falls 1 through 7, we're good. Somebody's eating off of it. You know what I mean? And that's how we feel. And we're not intimidated with each other, because we know that there's so many different things about you. It's like, they're like, you love different. You say hello different, based on your experiences. You navigate the world different, So, and like, that's kind of like what I feel like casting directors or people want. They want your uniqueness with the text on top, So don't come in bland. Lean into who you are and be who you are. Like for me, it was like vulnerability, hard on the sleeve. So sometimes I would shy away from that, saying like, oh, maybe you feel too much, Adrian. Maybe you're a little too vulnerable. And then my friend Leighton, once again, gave me permission. He looked me in my eyes and told me that the fact that you can feel as deeply as you can for someone outside of yourself is a superpower, because not everybody does. He's like it's no coincidence that you happen to be in the field that you're in, because that is exactly what you were being called to do. You were asked to take this text and to feel as deeply as you can about this person in the page, within the fine lines of this, with another human being, and tell a story. And that is something that comes natural to you. He's like, do you see the way God has lined it up for you? Or is it just me? So lean into your own uniqueness. Yeah.
Incredible, man. Honestly, this is probably the best advice I've heard, and I've interviewed all sorts of different people in different sort of creative expressions, you name it. And I really, really, truly appreciate what you're sharing with us here. I can't even speak. I'm so overwhelmed by no, seriously, bro. This is it's incredible. I really I appreciate that. I'm gonna ask you two more questions because I don't want to take up more of your time. This has been really fantastic. I'm curious to know, now you've been active in the industry now for several years.
Yeah.
Have you seen any progress in terms of representation and opportunities available for Black Canadian actors? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do feel like it's getting better. It's not all the way there yet, but I don't like to complain. I like to be a part of change. I don't really like to complain about anything because it's like with all the complaining that can be done, there's someone that is going out there and figuring it out and being like, hey man, this is what they gave, but I came out and made my own way, like the conditions for Denzel, were pretty rough, but he still made it through. Still made it through. So it's like I like to view things in that way. But it is getting better. It is definitely getting better. Like I feel like there is material being created nowadays that is like Black focused. You still see tokenism. That will always be there. Hopefully it does change. Where it's like, white, and then that one Black person, so that's still relevant in our industry, but I do feel like it is changing, where you have, like a Black Panther, you have a Creed 3, where, two Black young giants, young kings are leading a film, and you're going there for both of them. No one person is taller than the other, because that's something that has been rooted in the industry. So like pretty much saying only one can go, really rooting that into like a Black person's mentality as an artist, but I feel like we are seeing like those doors being broken down. We're seeing Woman King, we're seeing those films specifically with darker skinned people, which is important because that is representation. And even like I'm working on a project now and I'm the lead of it. And I'm working with this amazing director called Fitch Jean. He's this Haitian brother out of Ottawa, phenomenal filmmaker. The world's going to hear about him in a very loud way very soon. I give it a year and a half. And you can hold me to this. We can date this. Time stamp. What was time? 9/12 on
April 4th.
April 4th, 2023. Big deal. Myself included. Hey, you're gonna hear about us. You're gonna hear about it. We're working on something that's really special, and it through and through is like 90. I want to say in the cast is 93% Black.
Wow.
And ambiguous, as well as the crew. Even the casting director for this project is of African American descent. Her name is Hannah. And I feel like that is so special because it is rare. So I feel like with the conversation about representation, I feel like it's upon us, to be as like while we're having the conversations with different cultures, white people, Black people, Asian people, Indians, what have you. I feel like it is on us to as we're having those conversations, setting up things in place, like points of action, where it's like, all right, we're having this conversation, and here's a project we can tackle right now that doesn't just keep it at words, but actually as a movement forward to change, So we're working on something right now, and that's been a blessing. We're going to camera next month, May 14th, I believe.
In Toronto or in Ottawa?
No, in Ottawa.
You're filming in Ottawa?
Yeah, in Ottawa. Okay, yeah, I'm from Toronto, but I'm shooting in Ottawa. So that's going to be really fun. That'll be my first time over there. And it's about, a young man who's Rwandanese. So that's even further, representation. Someone whose family who survived the genocide.
Wow.
And this is a 10-year commemoration of, what life looks like for them, post, that experience. And this happens to be a family that was so traumatized by it, they never spoke about it. The minute they left, they just tried their best to forget it ever happened, as if it never did, and that slowly trickles its way back into the dynamic to the point where it just erodes the whole thing, and seeing like what's that like navigating that through a young man's eyes who's also dealing with trauma, which highlights, you know, the Black community, because like Black community doesn't really believe in mental illness, doesn't really believe in trauma. You know, that's another conversation.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm starting to interrupt. I'm glad you mentioned that because I know, you know, I'm originally from Ethiopia. I'm Canadian, but my parents are from Ethiopia, and I can tell you in that culture that I think the whole of Africa, but East Africa, I don't want to speak for everybody. The idea of mental health is like no one talks about it. It's not, you know, there's huge stigma when it comes to the topic of mental health. So it's really interesting that this project you're working on is going to be exploring on all these important themes because they're very relevant in all of our lives.
You know, and like I feel like, especially when we have like, you know, young Black people fearing each other in the streets, you know, and are trying to find, you know, come from broken homes and trying to find homes in other ways, which might be gang affiliation, you know, and whatnot, and then feeling like that's something to protect. So when they see someone who also found a home in that, you know, they go to war on that, and that's just trauma. That's just a conversation that never happened, leading to war, you know. And did you freeze?
I think yeah, you're frozen on my end as well, but I can hear you. Can you hear me? I'm back. Oh, yeah, okay. Can you hear me now? Oh my, are we back?
Yeah, we're back. We're back. What was the
Okay.
last thing you heard me say?
You were talking about the trauma of the sense of belonging that kids who come from broken homes joining gangs and then they go to war for each
Yeah,
other.
just trying to find a home, you
Mm.
know, and then and in the nature of self-preservation, you try and defend that home, you know, and when two broken kids find themselves on opposite sides, you know, then we have a war in the streets, you know. So I feel like this story navigates that, not necessarily war in the streets, but like there is a bit of that, like people trying to find homes. Like we do explore that within the story, but it's like as young Black men, I feel like we need to talk about things more. Like if you are experiencing trauma, you need to have those conversations. You need to say, hey, you know, like, you know, like I noticed myself getting triggered, you know, like you said something and technically you didn't really mean any harm to me, but I noticed myself being really angry. Why do you think that is? You know, and having those conversations and seeing where it leads. You know, I don't think therapy is a bad thing. Self-love is important, you know, and self-care is important. So yeah, we explore those themes, you know, within our story, like a man trying to navigate his experience and in a way, you know, not model his parents' journey because they never talked about it. So it's only natural for him not to talk about it, you know. And then sometimes it gets to a point where things are too late, you know, where you go to the point of no return and you can't come back from what has happened,
Right.
you know. So yeah, that's just like some of the themes we're exploring in our film. And then my brothers and I, we're gearing up to do another feature film as well, that I can speak a little on, because like we have to put it in, we have to like, we have to go into production first before I can talk too much about it. But it also explores that same theme of like people coming from broken homes and what that's like navigating trauma, you know, in a world where, you know, based on your experiences and the way you try to survive and live your life has protected you. Now realizing that that no longer serves you, you have to go in the opposite direction. You
Mm.
know, you have to choose to be vulnerable. You have to choose to talk, open up, you know, allow yourself to be seen and not feel scared by that, you
Wow.
know. So yeah, yeah. So like two amazing projects we have in the works. One that we're currently about to film, and one that's going to be put in production. That I'm really grateful to be a part of. And it further solidifies like and reinforces like why I stepped into this world of acting. You know, feeling like, you know, I can offer something and be of service, as well as entertain, but also touch on something that's very important. You know,
Mhm.
kind of hiding the lesson in the medicine. You know, So that's it. That's like why I got involved in this industry, and I'm very grateful to be a part of like things that are in alignment with that, and like carrying out the mission, really.
Where can we follow your projects and all this activity? Because I'm really curious to see these films and projects. So where can where do you post about this?
Well, what's my Instagram? You can always follow me on Instagram.
On Instagram,
To be honest,
okay.
I'm not the best with posting to Instagram. I'm not the best with posting Instagram. I feel like I keep a lot of things to myself. But let me grab my Instagram handle if I remember it.
I'm gonna tag it in the interview. All good. I'll tag it in.
Okay. So yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. You can also follow BDB Productions Inc. _, I believe, which is like the production company.
Okay.
And for the other film that we're working on right now, it's called It Comes in Waves. And that's the title of like, highlighting trauma. It doesn't just land in one day, it comes in waves. It comes and it goes until you address it. Wow. And you want to get to it before the wave is too big and you're no longer in control. That you can follow through Lens Film, at Lens Film, or director Fitch Jean, who's the director and writer of that. So that's pretty much like how you can keep in touch with like whatever I'm up to, and yeah, pretty much get the loop on like what we're doing.
Right on. Well, I'm definitely going to be following up on that. I'm curious about both of these projects and all the great work you're doing. I want to thank you very much for your time and for being very open and sharing all these for telling us about that film ROADMARKS, but also telling us about your experience in getting into the zone and your story as it pertains to your journey into acting. Thank you very much, Adrian. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time as well, brother. Thank you for having me.